Hello and welcome to LFC Focus. It's time for another news show. Once again, it's jam-packed with plenty of transfer rumours, the kind of stuff that I know you guys all love. And kicking off with the top story of the day, it is all about Roma's goalkeeper Alisson, currently away with Brazil at the World Cup. There have been some very interesting reports coming out from various sources, starting off with one that I think will upset Liverpool fans a little bit, it's fair to say, from Calcio Mercato, saying that Roma are essentially refusing to deal with Liverpool because of the Mo Salah deal that happened last summer. Now, this is an interesting one. Essentially, it's saying that because of the low fee that Roma got for Salah, the fact that they essentially had their pants pulled down by Liverpool in the transfer market last summer, they don't want to deal with us for Alisson again this time round. Now, there's reasons why you would and wouldn't believe this. I mean, for starters, I think it's fair to say that there are quite a few egos in football. We've certainly seen that when dealing with Lyon this summer. Jean-Michel Aulas is a massive ego, and he's very concerned with the way that he portrays himself in the media and the image that he gives across of himself as a tough negotiator. And I think Roma like to have the same kind of image coming out of their club as well. And when you let a player go for 35 million and suddenly he becomes the best player in the world or thereabouts, he's delivering those kind of numbers, he's in those kind of conversations, you do look a little bit silly. And I think they don't want to go into this summer transfer window having that image of a club who, you know, you can get a cheap deal out of, you can go in and maybe you can haggle a little bit. They want to have a reputation as hardline negotiators. So I can see why they'd be annoyed about that. But I also don't see why they'd actually hold a grudge against Liverpool over that. Because I think at the end of the day, while it might be portrayed in the media that, you know, clubs always have these frosty relationships and it's always like a battle when they come together to negotiate transfer fees and buy players and stuff like that, I think things are actually a lot more diplomatic than they may seem. So while I think Roma they will naturally be upset about the Salah deal, not only did they not get anywhere near as much money as really, let's be honest, they should have done, but it does affect their image as well. And I mean, at the end of the day, no one can say that at the time people were saying it was a good deal for Liverpool. There were people at the time who sniffed it in, said that Liverpool had paid way over the odds for a bloke who's already flopped in the Premier League. But hindsight, you know, is 2020, and people do look back at that now and think Roma kind of made a terrible error in letting him go for that kind of fee. So I can see why they're upset about that, but I can't see why the grudge would be held against Liverpool, because it's not Liverpool's fault that that deal ended up happening like that. It is simply that Roma thought at the time that the fee was fair enough. So it's an interesting one. Like I said, it's entirely possible that egos could be getting in the way here, but it is also possible that this could all be press talk and people just making assumptions because of the fact that Roma actually don't really want the keeper to go. I mean, elsewhere in Alisson news, like I said, he's been in the papers a lot today. It is also being reported that Chelsea are interested in the player as well. They're basically now resigned to losing Thibaut Courtois. I think it looks very much like he is going to go to Real Madrid. I mean, personally, I think we should be looking at Courtois if we are looking at a goalie, someone who is proven at a top level, proven in the Premier League and has done it for multiple seasons, rather than Alisson, who's only really been doing it for 1 year at Roma. It has been a good year, but it could potentially be, you know, a fluke or a one-season wonder or something like that. Courtois is very much a proven goalie at this kind of level. I mean, he would be fantastic for Liverpool. And I think if Chelsea are resigned to losing him, while he probably does want to go to Real Madrid over Liverpool, why not just test the water with a bid? Why not just say, well, what if we did give you £60 million for it? Would you entertain it or something like that? But I think it is interesting that Chelsea are supposedly interested in Alisson, because if Roma start to deal with Chelsea at the same kind of prices that they weren't willing to deal with at Liverpool, then that would confirm that this whole story about them holding a grudge against us is true after all. I mean, it's one certainly to keep an eye on. It'll be really interesting to see how that one does develop. But for now, there isn't going to be much going on, because reportedly his agent has said that, the quote is, nothing will happen in the next few days, and has said that his client is very much 100% focused on the World Cup at the moment. I mean, it's interesting that he hasn't come out and denied transfer talk. You know, if he really wanted the player to stay at Roma, if it was unlikely he was going to leave, he'd probably come out and say, you know, Alisson's happy at Roma, he's happy with the national team at the moment, he's not thinking about his future or anything like that. The fact that he said that, you know, nothing will be decided yet and we basically have to wait and see until after the World Cup suggests that he is leaving things very open in terms of what clubs might be interested in coming in for him. So really, really interesting what's going on with Alisson at the moment. I mean, I've already said on my channel my opinions on the goalie debate. I'm personally a little bit iffy on Alisson, but we do know that Jurgen Klopp really likes the player, and if he is going to bring in a goalie, it'll probably be him. And you never know, maybe if Roma don't sell him this summer, Jurgen Klopp could wait and see. But in terms of other goalies that we could be buying, James Pearce has basically crushed all rumours about Jasper Cillessen. This one certainly didn't last very long. It sort of came out, a few ITK Twitter accounts and stuff like that, all the usual nonsense, was sort of suggesting that Liverpool might be interested in Jasper Cillessen. It is reported in Spanish media that Barcelona have lowered their asking price for the player to £30 million because they basically just want to offload the fella. There are plenty of clubs apparently interested in him. I think Chelsea are interested in him as well as an alternative to Alisson if they don't get him and they do sell Thibaut Courtois. But the reports are that Liverpool have absolutely no interest in the player. And I think, you know, that's fair enough, because there are plenty of goalkeepers out there who, you know, if our goalie was terrible, then yeah, buy them, that's fine. But Karius is nowhere near as bad as I think some people think he is. He's actually a very good goalie. He just had a bad couple of games. And I think Jurgen Klopp has got the exact right idea in that he's basically going to assess the player's mental state throughout the pre-season campaign. And look, if he is suddenly made of jelly and he can't cope with any pressure, then yeah, fine, go in for some more goalies. But if he's actually improved, if this has improved him and improved his mental state and actually made him tougher and more determined to succeed and more focused on the pitch and more desperate to prove himself, then keep him, because it will only help Liverpool if we have a player like that with that kind of mental state in the side. So I can see why, you know, there isn't any talk of Liverpool putting in bids for a Cillessen or bids for Alisson or bids for any goalie on the planet yet, because at the moment it is all about just assessing Loris Karius and seeing what happens. And, you know, I'll be watching that game against Chester. I know it clashes with the England game. If you are not watching the Liverpool game on that day, then I feel very, very bad for you, because obviously Keita and Fabinho will be playing, and it will be very interesting to see what Karius' mental state is. So I think within a week or so, we'll probably have a much better idea of where Liverpool stand on the goalkeeping front. But for now, it's very much about keeping an eye on Loris Karius and how he performs in pre-season. So next up, it's Fekir watch. We haven't had anything huge on him over the last few days, but it feels like every day something comes out about the player and his possible move to Liverpool or any club under the sun in Europe. It mostly comes out of the French side of things. This time around, it is the Lyon manager basically saying that, you know, he wants Fekir to stay, which makes sense. He's a fantastic player. He's helped them achieve Champions League qualification. And it's kind of like the Naby Keita situation where once you've got Champions League qualification, that's when you want to start bringing in more players rather than losing your best players. So I can absolutely see why he wants to keep Fekir. But he has effectively said that Fekir is very much open to a move away. It's also something we know as well, because we know that Fekir was desperate to move to Liverpool. So it is the kind of stuff that we know already, but we're just hearing it from a different source this time. It's the Lyon manager rather than the French newspapers or Fekir's agent or Lyon president Jean-Michel Aulas. But it is once again interesting to see that this saga is just not going to go away, whatever happens. And I think whether or not Liverpool are interested in the player, the fact that the French media are so persistent in keeping the Fekir ball rolling, I think they've definitely latched on to the fact that Liverpool fans will click any article with his name on. Essentially, this is one that's absolutely going to rumble on until August the 9th. So while I don't think it's huge news, of course I always want to keep you guys updated on what's going on with Nabil Fekir. Elsewhere in potential incomings, this is a very interesting one that surfaced very recently. The Daily Mirror in England and a lot of outlets in Turkey as well. Interestingly, that will make a bit more sense later. Liverpool are very, very interested now in bringing Yerry Mina from Barcelona. The defender who has been playing for Colombia this World Cup, he scored 3 goals, including a last gasp equaliser against England last night. Has impressed so far. In Russia, he's done very, very well in a Colombia team that is slightly tumultuous. No, you know, it's sometimes brilliant, sometimes a bit rubbish, but their defence has been pretty decent so far throughout the tournament. Obviously, they are out now, but I saw them play against England last night. England were not getting a sniff for most of the game. You saw, like, Harry Kane was dropping 30, 40 yards deep to receive the ball because he was having absolutely no joy against those centre-backs. And it does seem like Liverpool have identified Yerry Mina as a key player in that. The reason the reports are also coming out of Turkey is that apparently Fenerbahce, who were reportedly also interested in the player, are starting to cool their interest. And apparently it is because Liverpool are starting to get more and more interest in the player and they feel like they just couldn't compete. Now, he currently plays for Barca. He does have an £88 million release clause, but apparently Barca are willing to offload him because they basically want to free up a non-EU slot in their team. I'm presuming that's because Spanish La Liga rules mean you can only have a certain amount of players from outside the European Union in your squad at any one time, and if they're looking to bring in a player from South America or Africa or Asia or anything like that, then they'll have to free up a spot, and apparently they're interested in offloading Yerry Mina for that. So while he has got that £88 million release clause, I'm sure that Barca would be willing to deal at a much lower price. I mean, Spanish clubs always have to have a release clause in the contract, so they normally set them at this mad high level, so that there's basically no chance of it being activated. I mean, there's been talk of Liverpool going in for Asensio at 158 million. His release clause is 700 million. They're just put there basically as an insurance thing after what happened with Neymar. No one wants to be stung like that again, like Barca basically got did over by PSG actually, you know, rising to the demands of his release clause. So I don't think he would cost 88 million. He'd probably cost a lot less, but it's certainly an interesting one. Like I said, in terms of Liverpool's possible links with centre-backs, we've also been linked with Vida, who's currently playing for Croatia at the World Cup and has also impressed a lot. We have actually got quite a lot of players in that position. I don't think there's a problem in terms of squad depth there. It's just maybe if one of those players wants to leave for first team football, or Jurgen Klopp is simply thinking, we've got a lot of players here, but they're not up to the standard. When you think about it, I mean, if Lovren or Van Dijk gets injured, the players that Liverpool have to start calling upon, they're fine if we're playing against lower league sides, but say we're in the Champions League semi-final and suddenly we've got to play Joel Matip, who's been pretty poor over the last year or so, or Ranier Klavan, or even Joe Gomez, who is all right, but still a little bit young at centre-back. In a game of that calibre, it's not something you really want to be doing. So maybe it is possible that Jurgen Klopp is having a look at that centre-back department and thinking, I just want to improve the standard of the players that, while they're not playing every single game, are always going to be available as an option from the bench or coming into the squad whenever anyone gets injured. That's another one that I think will unfold over pre-season as more players come back as well from international duty and from their holidays and things like that, and Jurgen Klopp does have a look at them, we'll start to find out where he really stands on stuff like that. But yeah, a very, very interesting one. I'd certainly be open to the transfer. He seems like quite a tough defender. He obviously does help at set pieces as well, so you don't know, he might actually be a very good signing for Liverpool. We'll just have to wait and see. Elsewhere, the Daily Star are reporting that Celtic are desperate now to get a deal for Harry Wilson over the line. Apparently they're interested in a season-long loan. Brendan Rodgers really wants him at the club, and with tomorrow's deadline for the Champions League squads, if you're involved in the qualifiers, which Celtic are, apparently Rodgers wants to push this deal over within the next 24 hours or so that he has Harry Wilson available as a player, as a squad option in those Champions League qualifiers. Now, I can't see it happening because I think he is one of those players that's already been identified as someone that Jurgen Klopp wants to have a really good look at in pre-season. He was injured during last pre-season, so he didn't really get a chance to prove himself in the squad, and this time round he's had a really, really good spell at Hull City. He's been impressing in the under-23s at Liverpool for a while, and he even did an interview the other day basically saying that he feels like this is going to be his season to break into the side. He feels like this is the moment where he can really start to become a first-team option for Liverpool. So it doesn't really sound like Harry Wilson's interested in a loan away, and it does sound like Jurgen Klopp is very interested in looking at him and seeing whether he would be a decent first-team option. So while it's possible that he could still go out on loan at the end of the window, I think Celtic's hopes of signing him within the next 24 hours are basically zilch. And finally, I mentioned in the news show on Monday that Besiktas were cooling their interest in Daniel Sturridge because of the fact that Liverpool value the player at £15 million and Besiktas were willing to deal at no more than £9 million. It's now being reported by Fanatic, which I believe is a Turkish outlet, that they've basically decided to go for Wilfried Bony instead. They've pretty much given up on Daniel Sturridge. They've also apparently got a little bit nervous about his injury record as well, which is understandable because his loan at West Brom, basically, he spent most of that on the treatment table, and when he came back, he never quite looked like he was at 100%. And I think with him being touted as being at £15 million, with that being the deal, that the only kind of price that Liverpool are willing to deal at, and the fact that Besiktas don't even rate him at that kind of price anyway, now that they're starting to get concerned about his injuries as well, I can see why they've gone off it, and they do want to get in Wilfried Bony as well. So Sturridge, he only has 12 months left on his Liverpool contract at the moment, so it is possible that we could just loan him out for the season, basically like we've done with Adam Bogdan, where we said we're not going to get rid of you this summer on a permanent deal, but we can send you out on loan, you can get some football, and then leave the club on a free next summer. I mean, it would be disappointing to let Sturridge leave on a free. We know that Liverpool like to get good deals for their players, even when they aren't necessarily in the first team plans for the next season. Like I said in the Monday news show. We did that with Benteke, with Jordan Ibe, with Brad Smith. We don't like to just lose players because we're not going to use them. So I think Liverpool will try and push to get Daniel Sturridge sold to someone. But with Besiktas off the table, it remains to be seen whether any other clubs are actually going to be interested in him. So that is all for the news today. Plenty of stuff to think about. Hopefully we'll see some more rumours over the next few days. If so, I'll be back with another news show before you know it. Until then, thank you very much for watching. Don't forget to like this video if you enjoyed it. Hit that subscribe button there if you're new around here. Check out some of the other videos that have been out on the channel over the past few days as well. Don't forget to follow at LFC Focus TV on Twitter, and I'll see you soon with hopefully another news show. Bye for now.